to revise together. By any other name. By any other name is a very important story. And here in the introduction, we see that Santha Rama Rao recalls her painful experiences as an Indian child attending a British-run school. So we're having here the writer, the author, as the main character in the story. Since it is a painful experience, I believe that you are going to learn a lot from it. So this is a memoir. What do we mean by a memoir? A memoir is a story that brings memory from a person's life. So this is a memoir. And what's the title one more time? By any other name. And from the title you can tell what the story is about. So this text will get students thinking about how childhood experiences can shape who we become as adults. And that's important. If you think of that, you will find out that you still till now remember things that happened to you when you were very little, and still you remember, and you might change your opinion about something according to this experience or according to a word somebody has said it to you, right? So one more time, this is a memoir by Santha Rama. So the main character is the author. Let's start. As we said, Santha Rama is a novelist. So she's very famous for writing novels, and a memoirist. So mainly her novels or stories about some experiences that happened to her. She was born in India to a distinguished family of doctors and civil servants. So her family was highly educated. Family members were highly educated. She grew up at the time where India was being ruled by the British. It's very important to know that there is a historical background here. So the story has a historical background. It's happening during the time when India was being ruled by the British. So we are going to explore with her the power dynamic that existed between the British Empire and the Indians. So India during that period of time was governed, colonized by the British. And you are going to find out about the treatment Indian children have received at an Anglo-Indian school. What's an Anglo-Indian school? A school that is mainly teaching or ruled by the British government. Let's go here to the story itself. As we said, it's kind of a narrative writing. It's a memoir. She's telling us about her story, something that happened to her when she was young. In the first paragraph, you're introduced to the setting. What's the setting? An Anglo-Indian school. The setting means the place and the time. It's an Anglo-Indian school in Zorinabad, to which my sister and I were sent. So we have the main characters here, the sister of the narrator. So because she said my sister and I, so the narrator of the story is the author of the story and the main character as well. She was 8, so the elder sister was 8 and I was 5. 5 and 8 years old, 2 girls going to an Anglo school. What happened to those 2 girls? They are facing or experiencing a new situation that they changed their names there. They changed our names. And this is what the whole story is about. The first day of school, a hot, windless morning of a North Indian September, we stood in the headmaster's study room, like an office, and the headmistress here means the principal of the school. Now you are the new girls. What are your names? My sister answered of us, I am Primilla, and she, nodding in my direction, is Santha. So those are, of course, Indian names, Primilla and Santha. What's happening here? The headmistress had been in India for so long. Still, she decided to give them new names. She smiled at them And she mentioned that still she's not able to cope with Indian names. Okay, and then what happened? She said, oh my dear, those are much too hard for me. Okay, so the names are very hard for her. Suppose you give you pretty English names. So she wanted to give them pretty English name, as if the Indian names are not that pretty. Wouldn't be that jolly? Let's see. Now, Primella, for you, I think she shrugged in a baffled way at my sister. That's as close as I can get. And, sorry, Pamela. And how about Cynthia instead of Santha? So what are the new names? You need to know the new names. Primella is now called Pamela. And Santha is now called Cynthia. My sister was always less easily intimidated than I was, and while she kept a stubborn silence, I said thank you in a very tiny voice. It's very important here to know that a difference is appearing. A difference is appearing. What's the main difference here? One girl is stubborn, and one girl we can say easygoing, right? So less intimidated than I was. Easily intimidated. So she's easily maybe getting nervous, scared. She's able to react faster than the youngest. The youngest said thank you in a very tiny voice. She didn't say anything. And then we had been sent to school because my father, among his responsibility as an officer of the civil service. Here we come to the reasons why those girls at the age of 8 and 5 were sent to school now and not before. So we are introduced to the reasons why they have been sent to school during that period of time when they're 8 and 5 and not before. Now we can tell that the father, among his responsibility, is an officer of the civil service. And then we have a description of what's happening here. Had a tour of duty to perform the villages around that steamy little provincial town where he had headquarters at that time. He used to make his shorter inspections tools, so we can tell that he's an officer. He inspects villages. He goes on a horseback, and we can skip all that to find out all that description of the father's responsibility. And then here we find the main reason for going to school. My mother had refused to send Primella to school in the British-run establishment of that time. So we have the mother refusing to send the girl to school. Why? Because the school was run by the British during that period of time. And this will show the mother's opinion about the British. So she did not want to send her girl to a British-run school. She used to say this quote is very important. You can bury a dog's tail for 7 years and it still comes out curly, and you can take a Britisher away from his home for a lifetime and still remains insular. So we can tell that this is the mother's opinion about the British, that they will never change. They have specific opinions, and they will never change their opinions towards the Indians or towards how they live or the kind of the kind or the way they govern the British or any other colony. Now we have the examinations and the degree from entirely Indian schools were not in those days considered valid. So the degrees during that period of time from Indian schools were not valid. And then in my case, the question had never come up, and if mother's extraordinary good health had not broken down. So here we're introduced to the main reason. The mother's health broke down, which means that she got sick. For the first time in my life, she was not able to continue lessons she had been giving us every morning. So our Hindi books were put away. The stories of the Lord Krishna as a little boy were left in midair, and we were sent to the Anglo-Indian school. So in this paragraph, we are introduced to the main reason here. What's the main reason of sending the girls to school? Is that the mother is very sick. but if she wasn't sick, she would have read the stories with them. She kind of homeschool the girls. So with the mother's sickness and the father's responsibilities, they had to send the girls to school. Also in this opinion, you can tell that, in this paragraph, you can tell that the mother's opinion of the British run school is not favored, is not a good opinion. So that's why she didn't want to send her girls to a British school. Now we are here back to the girls. The first day of school is still, when I think of it, a remarkable one. At that age, it's one name is changed. So we are introduced to the first name. The girls have new names. Imagine you're just attending school for the first day, and this is the first thing or the first experience that would happen to you. Someone is telling you that your name is not that appropriate or not that easy, and if you are going to get another name, that would be better for you. Of course, people are different in reactions, but to some degree, we can understand how those girls would feel. Maybe confused, they don't know how to react, they don't know whether to accept it or not, and we'll see how they reacted towards that. So this girl said that it's kind of having a dual character. She doesn't know, am I Indian or the other British name, since I'm going to a British school. And she remembers having a certain detached and disbelieving concern in the action of Cynthia. She feels that this name is not attached to her. It's like a strange name, but certainly no responsibility. Accordingly, I followed the thin headmistress down to the veranda to my classroom, feeling a passing interest in what was going to happen to me in this strange new atmosphere of a school. The building was Indian. Here, please, girls, you need to pay attention to the building, and remember that's an Indian place that is governed by the British. So the land is Indian, the building is Indian. But we'll see how the British changed things in order to just... So the building was Indian in design. This is very important. The building was Indian in design and wide verandas opening onto a central courtyard, but Indian verandas are usually whitewashed with stone floors. These, in the tradition of British schools, were painted dark. So they changed the painting of the verandas to, instead of white, to brown, and had matting on the floors. It gave a feeling of extra intensity to the heat. I suppose there were about a dozen of Indian children in the school. So we are introduced also to Indian students in the school. We have some Indian girls in the school. 4 of them were in my class. They were sitting at the back of the room. This is very important to know. Where did they sit? They were all sitting in the back of the room, and I went to join them. So this is also something to raise just a question. Why were they all seated at the end of the class? Why? And something else. She just straight away followed them, or she sat next to them. This will raise the idea of maybe belonging. You go directly to the people whom you feel belong to you or same like you. I sat next to a small girl who didn't smile at me. She had long glossy black braids and wore a cotton dress. So now they're wearing dresses, but she still kept on Indian jewelry, a golden chain around her neck, the gold bracelets, and then tiny ruby in her ears, like most Indian children. So they looked Indian, and they kept some of their Indian accessories with other costumes, like the dress. She had black kohl around her eyes. The cotton dress should have looked strange, but all I could think of was that I should ask my mother if I couldn't wear a dress to school too, instead of my Indian clothes. So we know that she also wanted to wear a dress instead of her Indian clothes. I can't remember too much about the proceeding in class that day, except for being the teacher pointed at me and asked to stand up. Now, dear, tell the class your name. I said nothing. Come along, she said, frowning slightly. What's your name, dear? I don't know, I said finally. So the girl was very confused. She doesn't know what to say. Will she say her Indian name, or the name Santha, or the name the headmistress has given her, which is Cynthia? The English children in front of the class, they were about 8 to 10 of them, giggled, of course, and looked at her. She sat down quickly and opened her eyes very well, hoping that this will end. And then we have the little girl with the braids put her hand and very lightly touched my arm. She still didn't smile, so as if she's trying to comfort and calm her. Most of that morning I was rather bored. I looked briefly at the children's drawing and so on, and she got some lessons, and it seems that she knew those words before, except one word was very new for her, which is apple. Then we have, when it was time for lunch, the children were all opening packages and sitting. They had sandwiches, but she and her sister had Indian food. And now she's back to the school. She was very sleepy after lunch, and then she took a siesta here. It's like a nap after school and so on. We go through this. And then here at school, we rested for a short time. Here we have the girls speaking about the concept of competitive games. And here we have a cultural shock. Okay, so what are competitive games in the school? You have to play and you do your best, you compete, and a winner is a winner no matter what. Okay, but in her culture, she mentioned that she used to play competitive games with her sister, but she was allowed to win because she was young. And this is how also the mother encouraged the girls. It's kind of like taking care of the youngest. Let them win. It's not a big deal. But for the school, it was the opposite. She let the youngest win, and then she found out that they didn't do that in return to her. So that was so confusing. One more time, she's Indian. The place is Indian, but the school is run by the British, and they have established the rules, and we can tell that the British students and even some of the Indians are following those rules. So she's having some of kind of a shock to witness all this. And we go through this till when there was a test in the school. So Primella said we're too small to have them. So Primella had a test one day, and she asked what's a test, and her sister said you're too small to have the test. You won't have them in your class for so long. And they laughed and they went to school. What happened here in the day of the test is very important. Okay? So the whole lovely evening, I didn't think about school at all. And she played at home and so on. Let's come here to the day of the test. It was a week later, the day of Primella's first test. This is very important. This is the important part. That our lives changed. Why? I was sitting at the back of my class as usual. One half listening to the teacher. I had started a rather guarded friendship with the girl with the braids, whose name turned out to be Nalini, Nancy in school. So, and it's the same situation. The Indian girl was given another name, a British name, in the school. And then the three other children, Indian children, were already fast friends. And even at that age, it was apparent that all of us, that friendship with the English or Anglo-Indian children was out of question. So they didn't make any friendship with them. During the class, my new friend and I would draw pictures, show them to each other secretly. So this shows that she tried to get along with everything, right? If you remember, when I told you, you need to be aware to compare the two personalities of the two girls. So here we have Cynthia getting along, making friends, and maybe not accepting, but at least she said, I don't know the new name. Okay, so we don't know whether she accepted it or not. And now here we have the door opened sharply and Pramila marched in. At first, the teacher smiled at her in a kindly and encouraging way and said, now you're little Cynthia's sister. Pramila didn't even look at her. Look how Pramila acted. She didn't even look at her. She stood with her feet planted firmly and her shoulder rigid and addressed herself directly to me. Get up, she said. We're going home. And this can tell you a lot about Pramila's character. We can tell that she's stubborn. She doesn't handle disrespect. I didn't know what had happened, but I was aware that it was a crisis of some sort. And what did she do? She rose obediently and started to walk towards my sister. See the kind of relationship between the two sisters. She didn't say anything. Her sister told her, stand up, come with me. She just silently, followed her sister. Bring your pencils and notebook, she said. I went back to them and together we left the room. The teacher started to say something just as Pramila closed the door, but we didn't wait till we hear her. And then they went home. In complete silence, we left the school grounds and started to walk home. Then I asked Pramila what the matter was. All she would say was, we're going home for good. We're going home for good. It means maybe we're not going to the school again. We're going home for good. And here we have the girl still remembering the way going to school. When we got our house, the ayah, like the helper, just taking a tray of lunch into my mother's room, she immediately started a long word questioning about what were they doing in the house during that period of time. Mother looked very startled and very concerned and asked Pramila what had happened. Pramila said, we had our test today. It's very important to know the reason behind what happened, leaving the school for good. She said, we had our test today, and she made me and the other Indians sit at the back of the room with a desk between each other. Why did she do that? She said it was because Indians cheat. A generalization that's not accepted. So I don't think we should go back to school. And mother looked very distant and was silent a long time. The mother didn't know what to say. Of course not, darling. She sounded displeased. We all shared the curry, and she was having for lunch. After I was sent to the beautifully familiar bedroom for my siesta, I could hear mother and Pramila talking through the open door. Mother, do you suppose she understood all that? They're asking if Cynthia understood the idea behind leaving this disrespectful place in Pramila's point of view. How come the teacher would say this about Indians, in her opinion? And how come she just alienate or separate the kids and say that? And Pramila said, I shouldn't think, she's a baby. Well, I hope it won't bother her. Of course, they were both wrong. I understood it perfectly. I remember it all very clearly. She understands everything. She knows everything, but she did not say anything about it. But I put it happily away. How did she react? She just put it happily away. It means she forgot about it. Okay? Because it had all happened to a girl called Cynthia. This did not happen to me, and this will tell you about her character. She could care less. This happened to Cynthia, the girl in school, not to me. I'm another person. And I never was really particularly interested in her, so she herself, Santha, didn't like Cynthia, and she didn't like the name they gave her in the school. And here we have an open-ended, kind of an open-ended story. We don't know if they still went to school or no, but we have now experienced or felt how Santha felt in her first day of school in an Anglo-British school. Okay? It's very important here to know that one situation might change our opinions about many things. We will never forget things or important things that happened in our life. What themes can be discussed here? Many themes. We can speak about the theme of respecting other cultures, the theme or the idea of colonizing, the idea of the British and the Indian conflict, and also the idea of how memories or childhood memories affect our lives. And thank you.